And principals, I think he has recused himself. So I think he's gotten some very important work. So we are there representing the college.
So I think we are good to go.
Yeah, it's the critical mass has reached now.
So the BA Program Department of Ramjas College welcome you all to the last but the most informative and edifying segment of Sangam 2022, organized under the able guidance and mentorship of our respected principal, Professor Manoj Khanna, convener, Professor Tanveer Ejaz, and co-convener, Professor Mausmi Bose. दिल्ली विश्वविद्यालय के संस्थापक महाविद्यालयों में से एक हमारे रामजस महाविद्यालय की हमेशा से विद्यार्थियों का विभिन्न प्रकार से व्यक्तित्व विकास करने की परंपरा का उद्भव हुआ। और ये उद्भव कैसे हुआ? ये उद्भव महात्मा गांधी, डॉक्टर राजेंद्र प्रसाद, बाबा साहब अम्बेडकर, मार्टिन लूथर किंग आदि महानुभावों द्वारा किसी न किसी रूप एवं कालखंड में हुआ। इन्हीं संस्कारों एवं परंपराओं का पालन करते हुए आज बीए प्रोग्राम डिपार्टमेंट द्वारा महिलाओं के खिलाफ हो रहे अपराधों के विषय में आयोजित इस संगोष्ठी में हम सभी उपस्थित हैं। अपनी बात को विराम देने से पहले मैं चंद पंक्तियां कहना चाहूंगा कि ये दाग जो लहू के आंचल में लगे थे, ये दाग जो लहू के आंचल में लगे थे, इस ढेर में बेजान से अरमा कहीं पड़े थे, इस ढेर में बेजान से अरमा कहीं पड़े थे, वो हूबहू इंसान थे पर इंसान न थे, वासना की कामना धर हैवान खड़े थे, वासना की कामना धर हैवान खड़े थे। With this, I would like to request Astha to let us acquaint with the topic of discussion and the speakers. Over to you, Astha.
Thank you, Mrityunjay. Thank you so much. Before starting today's session, we must know why we chose sexual offense against women as a topic of discussion for today's seminar, and why not some other topic. The reason is its relevance in present time. We are in 21st century, but still talking about harassment, sexual offenses, and sexuality is still a taboo. By holding today's seminar, our aim is to raise awareness about sexual offenses against women and to make a step forward by trying to create a general notion against it. To get an expert opinion on the topic, we have Dr. Vageshwari Deshwal. She is professor at Faculty of Law, University of Delhi, a feminist speaker, author, activist, and have written scholarly articles on various areas of law, including violence against women. She has also done PhD in criminal law and gender justice. We also have Chinki Sinha ma'am to speak about the Curator of Absence. She is editor of Outlook India. She has also written for BBC, Al Jazeera, India Today. She has done Masters in Journalism from Syracuse University, New York, and fellowship at University of Pennsylvania, USA. So without taking much time, I would like to invite Professor Vageshwari Deshwal to enrich our understanding on the topic sexual offenses against women. The floor is open to discussion now.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Mrityunjay and Astha, for setting the tone for the session. And thank you, Professor Mausmi and Professor Tanveer, for organizing this program and inviting me to speak on a topic that we all know is very, very important, but something that is seldom talked about. Sexual offenses against women and the law. See, we all know that ours is a patriarchal society, and in our patriarchal society, women are treated as the secondary sex. The lack of the single Y chromosome, it has placed women in a position of subordination to men, and men folk, they feel entitled to use, abuse, and exploit women as per their whims. Sexual offenses, whenever we talk about them, the most common offense that comes to our mind is rape. Rape accounts for 12% of all crimes that are committed against women in India. As per the statistics that are available, as per the National Crime Records Bureau, NCRB data, one woman is raped every 20 minutes in India. So many rapes are happening. And this is the data which we have now. This NCRB has been working consistently since so many years, and these data we have not been able to see a decline in the numbers despite having so many amendments in our laws. The reason is because although we talk about rapes, but the precursors to rape, the reasons why these rapes happen, those crimes, they are invisible in our society. See, when I talk about a crime being invisible, that is because we don't take notice of it. We know that these things, they happen, but we either dismiss them as being too trivial, or we simply don't acknowledge them as being that important that they merit our attention, due to which finally, when they erupt into something violent such as rape, that is the time when we take notice and we realize that maybe we should have done something about it earlier. So what are those invisible crimes? I'll be talking about that, and I'll be talking about the various sexual offenses that are acknowledged in our laws. Sexual offenses, see, in our country, we have gender-specific laws. We also have gender-neutral laws, but that is only for children below 18 years of age. This I'm talking only in respect of sexual crimes. See, otherwise, when we talk about civil laws and criminal laws, they are all gender-neutral in nature. But when it comes to sexual offenses against children below 18 years of age, for them we have a gender-neutral law in the form of POCSO, wherein both boys as well as girls below the age of 18 are protected against any form of sexual assault, whether that is sexual assault of an aggravated nature, whether that is penetrative in nature, whether that involves showing pornography to a child, or whether that involves usage of child for any pornography or pornographic or other obscene purposes. Now that is a gender-neutral law for which both a man as well as a woman can be held guilty under the law. So for children below 18 years of age, we have a gender-neutral law to protect them against sexual offenses. But when it comes to people above 18 years of age, we have a gender-specific law. The term rape, when we talk about the term rape, that itself is a gender-specific term which has been derived from the Latin term rapio. Rapio, which means forcible seizure of a woman. So sometimes we read it in the newspapers that a 20-year-old man was raped. I'm sorry, but but anyone, no man can ever be raped, because that is a gender-specific term. Anyone can be subjected to sexual assault. Sexual assault is a gender-neutral term. So whether it is a man, whether it is a woman, whether it is a trans person, anyone can be subjected to sexual assault. But when it comes to rape, because it is a term which the genesis, as I told you, forcible seizure of a woman, so that is something which can be committed only against a woman. So sexual assault could be of any degree. It could be a penetrative sexual assault. It could be of any form, but it would amount to rape only and only if it is committed against a woman, not against a man, not against a trans person. So coming to all the sexual offenses that our laws talk about, in 1860, we got the substantive law relating to crimes in our country. That substantive law is the Indian Penal Code, which was drafted by the Britishers. So at the time when it was drafted, we had an offense which protected women against eve-teasing, which protected women against molestation, and there was also this offense of rape that was included therein. Now the difference between eve-teasing and molestation is that, although in IPC you don't come across the term eve-teasing, but that is covered under section 509, what it says, that if you have harassed any woman from a distance, like if you are singing any songs that are objectionable in nature and are directed towards her, you are making any sounds, gestures, any way you are trying to harass the woman, but from a distance, then that amounts to eve-teasing. But in case you have used any kind of a force against the woman, if you push the woman, touch the woman, grope her, if you try to outrage her modesty, in which any kind of a physical contact is involved, any kind of a force is used against the woman, then that amounts to molestation. So there is this kind of a difference between eve teasing and molestation. That is, eve teasing takes place from a distance, whereas in molestation there is some physical contact involved. So molestation was covered under 354, and for eve teasing we had section 509, and we had section 375, which talked about rape. Now, the laws, we had lots of amendments in the laws, and the law relating to rape developed, and it was amended several times. And the age of consent, it was initially pegged at 10, then it was made to 12, 14, 16. And now finally we have the age of consent at 18. Now, age of consent is the age at which a girl is considered mature enough to say yes for a sexual relationship. Below 18, now even if she says yes, her consent is not presumed to be consent in the eyes of law. And if anybody establishes any kind of a sexual intimacy with a girl who's below 18 years of age, irrespective of her consent, that amounts to rape. And in law, we have a term for that, and that is known as statutory rape. Earlier, we had a window wherein it said that if the girl was married, because as we know in our country, child marriages are legal, despite having a law that prohibits child marriages. But the status of child marriages as it is are legal till the time one of the parties doesn't get it nullified. So earlier we had a window in the law wherein if a minor girl was married, so if she was above 18 years of age but below, if she was above 15 but below 18 years of age, then even if her husband established intimacy with her, that would not amount to an offense. But in 2017, we had a judgment, Supreme Court judgment in the case of Independent Thought versus Union of India, wherein the court said that no, we cannot have this kind of a discrimination between married and unmarried women. So this age of consent would be uniform. For everyone, it would be 18 years of age. So even if a girl is married, but below 18 years of age, no one can establish any intimacy with her, even if she is married. Surprisingly, that same Supreme Court refuses to acknowledge that it can be discriminatory, that this concept of consent should be the same for all women above 18 years of age. Now, the same Supreme Court, it refuses to acknowledge that women can be raped within marriage, even if they are beyond 18 years of age. So this is something which is still pending before the Delhi High Court, that is hearing a plethora of writ petitions that are pending before it. And this is a very, what we call as a debatable issue, whether marital rape, it needs to be criminalized or not. Anyway, since it is sub judice before the court, so this is something that we can maybe take up some other time. Now coming to the sexual offences, eve teasing, molestation and rape. In 2012 December, the collective conscience of our country was shook when a 23-year-old paramedic was gang raped brutally and thrown out without her clothes from a moving bus on a cold, chilly night and left to die. Rather, the people who had raped her, they also tried to drive their bus over the girl so that she could be killed. Yes, I'm talking about the Nirbhaya incident. After the Nirbhaya case, there were mass protests, and finally there was a spate of amendments in the criminal law. And at that time, we also had a bill that was already pending in the parliament for a long time, and that was the POSH Act, which is the Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace. That was in the form of a bill, but the required impetus was provided by that movement, and we also got the President's nod to this bill, and it was also finally notified in the year 2013 itself. And now we had a POSH law, which is known as which is a civil law to protect working women against sexual harassment at workplace. In addition to that, when we amended our laws, when we amended our IPC, at that time we introduced sexual harassment as a crime. Before that, we had only teasing and molestation, but in 2000, disrobing as sexual offences against women. So there were newer categories of crimes that were added to the already existing crimes under the IPC. Additionally, we introduced one more of, and we all obesity attacks against women. So whenever such a case would come before the police, if anybody would go asked them to register an FIR. So in the absence of any specific provision to deal with specific attacks, specifically with acid attacks, the police officers, they could exercise a great deal of latitude and discretion and decide whether this case should go under the category of grievous hurt or whether it should go under the category of simple hurt. And how would they decide that? Depending upon their own few, they decided doing this, or what was the general character of the girl, what was she wearing, what were the timings when she was out of the home, and they would apply their own notions of morality and whether the girl's conduct was okay, or whether she herself did something to ask for this kind of a trouble, and then they would exercise their discretion in deciding whether this was a case of simple hurt or whether they should put it under the category of grievous hurt. Fortunately, in 2013, when we got all these provisions, Justice Verma also pushed for this acid attack to be introduced as a separate crime, and fortunately we got this, although it is a gender-neutral crime. See, acid is a weapon which can be used against a man, it can be used against a woman also, but the statistics show that there is a marked gender skew when it comes to the victims of acid attack, and majority of acid attack victims are women. So that is the reason when all these new sections were added, when we were talking about sexual harassment, voyeurism, disrobing, at that time, we also made some amendments in the procedural law, and now if anybody goes to the police station and wants to register an FIR in a case of a crime that has been committed against a woman, then registration of FIR has been made mandatory. And although acid attack is a gender-specific, gender-neutral crime, still acid attack has also been included in those categories of crimes wherein the registration of FIR is mandatory if it has been committed against a woman. See, earlier also, as per the law, the police officers, they cannot say no. If you go to the police station and if you want to register an FIR in a cognizable offence, now, cognizable offences are more serious offences in which the police officers, they need to act promptly and they need to start investigations immediately. For this, they might also need to arrest the accused before he has time to run away, or before he can influence the witnesses, or before he can tamper with the evidences. So, keeping all this in mind, in cognizable offences, the police officers, they have to mandatorily register the FIR and immediately start investigations and also arrest if required. But earlier, police officers, they would not register FIRs for a long time. So in 2013, alongside the other amendments, there was also an amendment that was brought about in the CRPC, and it was categorically stated that in all cases of crimes against women, FIR has to be mandatorily registered immediately when they get any information. They cannot refuse to register an FIR, and if they refuse to register an FIR, the police officer can be prosecuted and he can be punished with a minimum of 6 months imprisonment, which may go up to 2 years of imprisonment. So they do not have the right to say no. In addition to that, whenever they get such an information, it is their responsibility to immediately get the victim medically examined. See, earlier what they would do, they would say, ki jao apna medical examination kara ke aao. They would send her away, ki pehle tum jao. See, there have been so many cases when a woman, she would go and say that, see, I have been raped, and police officers, they would not believe her. They would say, ki nahi, pehle medical examination karao, so that we know that yes, actually you have been raped, and only then we will register an FIR. No, but this medical investigation and all, this is a part of the investigation process which has to be conducted by the police officers. It is their responsibility. Immediately register an FIR, arrange for her medical examination, arrange for her statement to be recorded, and that too at a place where the woman is, and where in the presence of those people in whose presence she is comfortable. See, you cannot order her to come to the police station. It is your responsibility to escort her to the doctor and get her medically examined. Another thing, when it comes to medical examination, if the victim does not want to be medically examined, she cannot be compelled to be medically examined. It is her wish. See, and if she wants to say no, she can do it. She does it at her own peril because her own case is getting weakened if she doesn't get herself medically examined. But if she says no, then nobody can get her medically examined. Although when it comes to the rape accused, his medical examination can be forcibly conducted. Because see, there it is not a matter that he says that no, I don't want to get myself examined and CD agree. Because there it is necessary to collect evidences. It is also necessary to collect evidences in the case of a victim, but if the victim does not want to get herself medically examined, then we will have to respect her wishes, because one who has already been victimized, you cannot put through her more trauma. And another thing that is very, very important, the courts have expressly stated that the two-finger test is not to be applied in any cases. Otherwise, usually what happens? See, this is a routine procedure. I did a study for the National Commission for Women, in which I came across so many victims, and I also talked to many doctors, and they told me that this is a routine process. Whenever a victim of sexual assault comes to them, they routinely do this two-finger test. And I said, what does this prove? See, because rape is a question of law. What does that mean? Let's see, what can medical examination? Medical examination can prove that yes, the woman had been physically intimate with someone. That can be proven, and that for that also we need all these forensic examinations to find out whether she had been physically intimate with this particular person or not. In addition to that, medical examination can see if she has been forcibly taken, if there are any signs of usage of force or brutality on her. So that is all that can be established by a medical examination. But when we say that rape is a question of law, that means that it would be rape if only it was done without her consent. Here, what is important is consent. So now, whether it was consensual or not, that cannot be proven by medical examination. There, what the law says is that if medical examination shows that yes, there had been a sexual intercourse between this victim and the accused person, that is something which medical examination can prove. And if the victim says that she had not consented, then the law presumes that there was an absence of consent, and the burden of proving that the woman had consented, it shifts to the accused person. Now the accused has this burden to disprove the woman, because the woman has said, see, I did not consent. Now the accused has to prove, because the court will proceed on the presumption of the woman's statement when she says that, see, I had not consented. Then so many positive amendments have been brought about in the laws. Now what the law says is that you cannot take ages to complete investigation. You have to complete investigation within a period of 60 days, and after that you have to fast track trial in rape cases, and you have to complete the trial within a period of 3 months, within a period of 90 days. Although these due to time period here, this can be extended if there are explainable reasons. Similarly, when it comes to FIR registration, ordinarily it is said that FIR is the information which is first in point of time, and it has to be immediately registered after the offence. But in cases of sexual offences, even if the registration of FIR is delayed, still it is not fatal to the prosecution case. Why? Because in our country, sexual offences are stigmatized crimes. And who is the stigma cast upon? The victim, not the accused person. Okay, so when I say that sexual offences are a stigmatized crime, that is, we are raising fingers at the victim. We don't question the accused. After all, it is the accused who is on trial. But we question the woman. What was she wearing? What was she doing at that place? Then we also have to see what was the hour at that hour of the night. What was she doing outside? In company of which people? Now, was she drunk? And I mean, there are so many other queries that we have, because we are very quick to judge people. And that is what we do whenever we see that any woman has been victimized, whenever she is a victim of crime. And that is why it is so demotivating for any woman to go out and complain and seek recourse, redress with the police that, see, something has happened to me. This is what causes a delay in the registration of FIR. Then, first of all, the woman is reluctant to complain, then her family members, because of the social stigma that it entails. We are scared that who's going to marry this woman. If she is married, then maybe her husband will leave her. Then what about the other women folk in the family? If there is any rape victim in the family. So because of these multiple demotivating factors, women are scared to go out and complain. And then I'll now come to those invisible crimes that I was talking about in the beginning. This molestation, eve teasing, and sexual harassment. Now, these all are invisible crimes. We all know that this happens. We all know it is happening around us. But we seldom see these crimes happening. Now, why is that? The reason is because we trivialize sexual harassment as a normally male flirtatious behavior. We believe that, okay, don't make a mountain out of a molehill. If there is any woman who wants to complain, we are like, oh my God, this is so common, and you should also take it all in your stride. Or why are you desperately seeking for attention? And then there are these kinds of queries that we put at the woman that, see, I have also been working for so long. I have never encountered any such sexual harassment in my career. Why do these things happen to you? Then we are very quick to cast aspersions on her character. See, you asked for it, the way you dress up, the way you put on your lipstick, the way you make your hair. You've got so many male friends. You spend so much of time on the phones, and you are always so friendly when you talk to men folks. So you are courting trouble. Okay? So these kind of counter allegations that we women are also very quick to put on other women folk, all this makes it extremely difficult for a woman to say that yes, she has been harassed. And as I said, then again, sometimes the victim, she's not even aware of the laws. She's not even aware that this is a crime which she can complain against, that sexual harassment is something for which she has a redress in the law. Then again, she is scared that people will label her as being oversensitive. And so due to all these things, women, they suffer in silence. It becomes very depressing for them. Sometimes they develop mental health problems at the workplace also. There is absenteeism due to which sometimes they suffer their lack of wages, the promotion opportunities. They are not able to concentrate on their work. So it affects them so much. Sometimes they are scared to build relationships also. They develop trust issues. They have problems when establishing intimacy with people. So sexual harassment, this molestation, all these crimes, these have a deep and an everlasting impact on women. And the problem is further aggravated when we refuse to trust these women and we instead start questioning them. And we, because of our socialization, we try to tell them that, okay, it's okay. So what? This is all the chalta hai attitude that we have, in which we believe that, okay, it's normal for men to say all these things, and you should take it in your stride, or you should not take it very seriously, due to which, see, it's a very subjective experience when we talk about sexual harassment. And the law also says that it is the impact that matters, not the intent. Many times the accused says that, see, I did not have any wrong intentions. Or he might say that, see, I am very friendly with everyone. Or, see, whenever I see a beautiful girl, or whenever there's a colleague of mine who's appearing very pretty, so it's very natural for me to compliment her. And I did not have any wrong intention. See, what does the law say? The law says that you are free to compliment people, but only those who are willing to receive those compliments from you. You have to be particular about not intruding into the personal boundary or comfort zone of other people. You can be friendly, but only with those who are friendly with you, who share that kind of a personal boundary or comfort zone with you. See, whenever sexual behavior of whatever degree, whenever it is unwelcome, whenever it is unreciprocated, and whenever it is imposed, so that amounts to sexual harassment. But the thing is, earlier we did not go to the courts because most of the times the courts would also, because it's very sad to say, but our judges are also not well sensitized, and they also fail to acknowledge the serious repercussions that it can have on the physical as well as mental well-being of any woman. Due to which women, they are also scared to approach the courts for redressal in case of sexual harassment cases. The society just simply fails to acknowledge it. It is only when there is something more violent, as I said, rape. It is only at that time when we realize that maybe we should have taken some action timely. And because we did not nip the evil in the bud, it finally got to that level. See, we say that sexual harassment cases, they are all fake because there are so many cases that are registered and so few cases that eventually result in conviction. See, the reason is the high rate of attrition because most of the women, they withdraw. They don't have the support or the energy to continue with these cases which carry on for years altogether. And women, when they backtrack because they are subjected to the same humiliating, demeaning questions time and again by the police and then by the lawyers in the courtroom and by all others who come to know that, okay, you are undergoing these court proceedings. So all these are such humiliating and demotivating factors that women, they take a back step. And when they backtrack, obviously the accused is set free because of lack of evidences and witnesses. Even otherwise, in cases of sexual harassment, see, it is very difficult to have any witnesses or evidences. See, because sometimes what may happen that in a room full of people, there might be someone who might be harassing me. And his conduct, which might appear ordinary to anyone else or harmless to anyone else, but that might be impacting me. Maybe there is some other equation that I share with that person, or maybe there is some mystery between the two of us, but others are oblivious of the same, due to which I have felt that something wrong has happened against me, that has impacted me, but there is no one to testify in my favor. Then again, I don't have any evidences also. So how do I prove this in front of the courts? Because court, they demand evidences and witnesses. It was for that precise reason that although we have sexual harassment acknowledged as a crime, but because therein we have relaxed procedures of evidences. We don't require witnesses. If what the victim is saying that inspires confidence before the committee, the accused will be held guilty. We are not placing undue reliance on witnesses and evidences in those civil proceedings. Criminal proceedings, the burden is on the prosecution, and the prosecution has to discharge that burden beyond reasonable doubt. So when we ignore crimes such as sexual harassment, she says maybe she means yes, and when she says yes, she is not a lady anymore. So this is something which I want to tell all the students here, all the boys and girls. See, it is the 21st century. Girls, they have a choice and they have a voice. If she wants to say yes, she will say yes. But don't take her no as a feeble yes or as a signal from her to coerce her to change her no into a yes. If she says no, that in itself is a full statement. There is no further qualification attached to it. No means an absolute no. Girls, don't give out any mixed signals. Understand that there is a responsibility upon you to conduct yourself in a very, very clear, fair and responsible manner. And it is equally important for the boys also to understand and respect the autonomy and the choice and the agency of consent of each and every girl. See, in stalking, if the boy follows the girl despite her disinterest, it is a crime. And stalking can also be done online. If you are online monitoring the activities of a girl, what time you are just sitting and you are waiting for her to come online, whether it is on WhatsApp, whether it is on any Snapchat or any other social media platform, that amounts to online monitoring. And even if the woman has not been impacted by it, still it would amount to a crime. So you see, stalking is a very, very serious crime that has been acknowledged now, and now it has been introduced in the IPC post 2013. Most of the people, they are not aware about these laws, and that is the reason why there is a low rate of conviction of these crimes. Then coming to voyeurism, okay, trying to send any pornographic images to anyone or trying to capture the private images of any person in a position where the person did not have the expectation of being observed or captured by anyone. So that all amounts to voyeurism. Similarly, disrobing. Removing the clothes of a woman without her consent in public, that is one offense wherein even abetment, because see, usually these are crimes which are committed by large numbers of people. One person would ordinarily not have the guts to do so. So people, they draw strength from numbers. So there might be one or two persons who might be actually doing the crime, whereas others might be just exhorting them to go ahead with that offense. So even abettors, even those who were just standing around and asking the accused persons to do that crime, even they would be held equally guilty. So now we have so many different kinds of crimes about which more and more girls and boys, they all need to know, so that girls and boys, they both know what is acceptable and what is unacceptable conduct in our as per our laws. So it is basically the socialization that is to be blamed. We need to understand, we need to appreciate that we are in a 21st century. Times have changed. Girls don't expect boys to open the doors for you or pull the chairs for you. Boys, if you want truly equal partners and relationships, see, because girls, they have come into their own now. Girls, they are in every walk of life. They have come ahead, whether it is the defense forces or wherever. So boys, they need to respect women. They need to understand them their due, because eventually, anyway, they are going to take it. So it is better that you accept it and you graciously accept that we are all humans and we are all equals, irrespective of whether it's a man, a woman, or a trans person. We are all humans and we are all equally entitled to what we say, the human rights, not entitled, they are basic rights, they belong to all of us. I know that I'm running out of time, and that is why I just like to conclude here. Maybe we can discuss more in the questions.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Now I would like to invite Chinki Sinha ma'am to further discuss the topic and add more value to it. Over to you, ma'am.
Well, I'm just going to talk about being an editor and a journalist. I will not speak about the legalities of. I mean, already she has spoken about a lot of it. I mean, I'm a journalist, so I'll stick to that. So basically, what Tanveer asked me to talk about was being a journalist and some of the stories that we kind of do in terms of how we curate absent stories in mainstream media. And so, Tanveer, I hope it's all right. You didn't tell me to elaborate on sexual harassment and everything. I'm going to talk about.
No, go ahead. Yeah, I know you've got a lot of stories. So, interesting ones. Yeah.
So
particularly from Mumbai. From Mumbai, you've gotten a lot of stories.
So why don't you go ahead and ask me, and I'll tell you.
Yeah. Just. I mean, you can enlighten us that. What did you find over there? In Mumbai, that about the sex workers that you had interviewed and that you talked to them, and what did you find there?
Okay.
The reasons, yeah.
Okay, so we are really bad at talking unless and until we are specifically asked to. So basically, this sex workers in Kamatipura, I've been going there for 10 years. This year I completed 10 years of going there. So one other thing about journalism is that, somebody told me when I was in college, never abandon your story. So some of the stories we keep in touch. It's not like you go there once and you leave, because in one go you can't really understand things and whatnot. So I went to Kamatipura Gully number 1 by chance actually, and it was in 2012, and I had just come back from the US on the basis of our story at that time. So we met Gauri Sawant, and that was also by chance. It's not like we were looking for this story. It's just that we were in Bombay and something led to something, and she took us to Kamatipura, and she took us to this famous Hijra Gully, which actually changed in the last 10 years, and now redevelopment is happening, and that's a whole lot of politics in its own wake. But because I'm more interested in human interest stuff, we went there, and there was this 8 eunuchs who lived in that brothel, and I had never been to a brothel before. And it was also growing up, we are always told, hijra log se dur ho raho, and you are generally not really, they are the others, and you don't really interact with them and all that stuff. And so we went there, and it was okay the first time. It was a little intimidating because we are not used to that, and they were not also used to us, and we also figured that we were being very exploitative, trying to get their stories. Even if we wrote their story, and even if it went in Time magazine, it wouldn't have helped anything, by the way. So this whole thing about journalism, a journalist trying to change things, I mean, I've been at it we don't change anything in that sense. We can only start conversations. That's a lofty claim to make. So anyways, we went there, and I don't know why I went. I kept going back, and they were very intrigued by me, and I was very intrigued by them, and we started to develop this personal friendship. But it was not easy, and in the beginning, because the brothels were so different, and it was so unusual, because it was also this one place where the hijras were there, and the sex trade was happening right in front of my eyes. They had these berths, like some 4 berths, like how you have a train, like 4 upper berths, 4 lower berths, and there's the flimsy curtain, and these people would walk in, and so first time I think I was very this thing, and I had these people with me, like the other journalist, I mean the photojournalist, and we were very reluctant, I remember, to have tea also, because it was very different, And then I came back, and I was very shocked that how can I behave like this, I mean, it's not. And I also realized that in order to do a story like this, like on people's lives and their very, very intimate lives, I think we have to break bread. And so the only way to kind of get to them was to have this friendship going on, and equally share my life with them and their life, and they would tell me stories. I mean, they were also curious about me, I think. And over the years, I think we've had many fights. I mean, just yesterday I got really abused by them, one of them. How did you come to my house and all of that? But that stuff happens all the time. So that friendship began, and then we did a series of stories from Kamatipura, and 10 years, and every time I would go to Bombay, I would go there, and they would make me lunch. Sometimes I would even lie down there, and there was this trust, and then only one time I went to the police station to, you have to register at the police station when you go to a red light area, saying that if there's a raid, otherwise you will also be taken to jail or something. But the police actually sent me to a police ka khabri, who actually locked me up in a brothel. So the sex workers actually came and saved me. And from there on, we had this very interesting personal relationship, and they would call me, and I even went to Ajmer with them. And so when Gangubai released, I mean, this is the latest one, we decided that we'll go back to Kamatipura, I mean, and figure out what is Kamatipura actually, to tell the people, because I know what Kamatipura is over the last 10 years that I've been there, but not many people knew. And sometimes the cinematic representation of these kinds of areas is problematic, because, Sanjay Leela Bhansali operates in a very parallel universe kind of a situation. And even that book, actually, that Hussein Dedi's most famous book, doesn't have the mention of, again, the portrayal of a transgender person, Razia Bai, is very problematic, she's a villain, and, all kinds of, and Kamatipura never looked that sexy. Even if you go back in history, it was never like that. I mean, I've been looking for that kind of stuff. Anyways, we went and found Gangubai's adoptive family. She had adopted almost like 30 boys and girls. In one of the brothels that she owned, there was even a statue of hers. And so that journey began. And then we thought that because of the redevelopment, we started way before, we wanted to track what happened in the gullies of Kamatipura, and which gullies were what, and it's all confusing. And, some gullies, like from 11 to 14 number gully, you have your sex trade. Gully number 11 was infamous for crime. Gully number 1 was always called Hijra Gully. Namdev Dhasal had written poems about Kamatipura. He was a taxi driver who lived in Dhor Chawls in Faras Road. Over the years, I've been to their quarters. It's strange, because in a city like Bombay, I mean, where you have friends who come from really high rises, you come out of Kamatipura and go to their house, it's very disorienting, and it's like, you don't know what the hell went wrong. And these people were renting out these beds, and under the beds they had this kitchen and their stuff there. And but for me, I think I wanted to talk about two things. Firstly, the dignity of the poor. Every time I would go, they would never let me pay for tea or some. One time I remember I went to Haji Ali with them, and I took them out to a restaurant, which was the biggest mistake, because they really never liked the biryani in the restaurant. But they kind of, they kept saying that we'll pay. And I had to always keep saying that, my office pays for all this. It's not my money. So I think sometimes we That was one stereotype. The second one was this exploitation. I never, like, they would always protect me and they would take me everywhere. And at some point, I thought they were willing to tell us their stories. I mean, it was not always the whole thing about prostitution is this or that and everybody is exploited. Maybe they are, but over the years I also realized that all women have a right over their bodies, and if there is a willing thing where they want to do it, why? I mean, there should be no stigma attached to it. And this time in redevelopment, we realized that sex workers basically have been told unspoken rule that they will not be allowed to do sex work when the new towers come up. And I remember this one, Zeenath, who has been my oldest friend over there, now she's angry with me. She had said, when the towers come up, remember us, because they will be gone. And their brothel is the last one that's still standing. That I think a driveway or a road will be made over there. It's the oldest one and it's the last one to go. So they said, I mean, obviously they have taken the deal and they're going to leave. But in the other gullies also. So we looked at redevelopment from the sex workers' eyes. And I think these kinds of stories matter because we never kind of ask these people for their opinion. We always ask, well-established, intellectuals about their opinions on this and that, but we hardly ever ask poor people what they want or what they see, and we never give them that space. So for me, being an editor at this point in time, we are dealing with a lot of patriarchy in this country and all kinds of things, and people probably think I've gone mad. It was very important for us to get that point of view. And I think journalism for me has always come from literature. I've been a literature student and I've read Hindi literature, all kinds of literature. And I feel that those kinds of stories are the best showcase of human life. And I think unless and until in a country that is so fractured, unless and until we do this kind of journalism where we get empathy, will not be able to understand each other. I think that's what is happening, and that is what othering is in this country right now. And I think if we made even the slightest attempt, I think things would be better. I also want to say that a lot of people who come into journalism, they want the glamour of journalism. They don't want the hard work of that's involved. Not everything is about being. I mean, firstly, what is a political reporter? I think everything is political. I mean, that feminist thing of personal is political is everywhere. Even the food that we eat is political. And I think a lot of people don't want to go to these unfamiliar places. And I think that's where the stories are. And I think whether your stories make you a very famous journalist or not, with some blue tick or many whatever, I think at the end of the day, maybe there is that satisfaction that you got a story and you told that story in some capacity, like however you could. And so when I have this magazine for however long it is there with me, I think I'm going to use that space to tell the stories of people like Zeenath or people or the sex workers who I met. And a lot of times people have said things to me like, do you have a problem with men? Do you have your Outlook is becoming like a feminist magazine? I mean, whatever it is, I don't know if why shouldn't Outlook be a feminist magazine firstly? And what kind of attitude is this? So it's not easy, it's difficult. And so most of the times we even discuss with Tanveer before, bringing out an issue sometimes. Like this time.
So I have one question. Yeah. So when you had gone to Kamatepura and you talked to them, did they tell something about the violence on their bodies?
A lot.
And did they tell something that how they think that they control their own body, but do they actually control their body?
Well, that's a complicated question, and I'm glad you asked me that. Many years ago, I had written a piece, 2 pieces actually. The one piece that I wrote for Open Magazine, and these two, both of these pieces appeared in Open Magazine, and to a large extent, I think that should answer your query. One was BDSM, about BDSM in India. And that was a cover story. And there was this small group of people which called themselves Chinki Collective. They had invited us to a photo exhibition, and they were willing to share their stories with us on only one condition, that you have to get the piece approved by them after you write them, whatever. I had never met anyone from that community before. Later on, I realized that all around me there were people who were into that, which is another story altogether. But over the years, I followed that story as well, by the way. So that also, we thought, like, how it is before getting into a story, you always have this perception that, oh, these people are psychopaths. And but then when you start to understand them, I think you understand whatever they were about. So this BDSM story basically opened this little thing about there is an articulation like BDSM, but what happens in the brothels where the consent is actually based on a transaction, right? Like a money-based thing. So we went back to the brothels, and I remember the story which was Men According to Prostitutes, which where we asked these women, what do you think of men? And it started from, again, the same brothel. Most of the stories started from there, and then they took me around. So if you read that story, they talked about the violence. Of course, there was a lot of violence because people, would pay. They told me about a guy who would, tie them with a rope and hang them from a fan and then beat them up and pay money. So in my head, I also maybe thought that a lot of cases of domestic violence also occur because of this. Maybe somebody like in a couple is into BDSM and the other partner is not, and this whole, I don't know, we started thinking like that. And they talked about a lot of violence and a lot of other kinds of things. Like somebody would come with Amul butter. They had kept this guy's name also Amul Butterwala or something like that. And he would rub butter on their body. That these were fetishes, right? And a lot of violence also came from these kinds of fetishes. Did the women own their bodies? Some of them did. Some of them actually told me that in most of the red light areas, if you go, women do not kiss. Kissing means love. They don't do that. It takes like exactly 5 to 7 minutes. They will not, like, if you see, their makeups are always intact unless and until they are very, very vulnerable, and those are very different cases. But to a large extent, women do have a right over their bodies if they are in a brothel. That is there's also this whole conception of madams being very this thing. They're not actually. Many of the madams actually take care of these women because they themselves came from that background. It's unfortunate that they have to do a lot of stuff which we probably will judge. But violence happens, but there are also ways that they counter these violence. I mean, I remember there was one case where this one guy slashed the neck of this one sex worker he was dating or apparently in a relationship with. The attitude of the police was that these sex workers use these taxi drivers and truck drivers and exploit them. But the other side of the story was woman's side of the story. So yeah, of course, those kinds of things happen, and there's absolutely no police protection. FIRs are not registered. Police will involuntarily blame the sex workers, and no action is ever taken. But then the women have figured out a way actually to sort of counter that violence also. I don't know if that answers your question because, but yeah.
Can I just also ask a question?
Yeah.
Hi.
Yeah.
So, so Tanveer, what you said actually made me think of this other sociological work that a friend is doing on domestic workers and the labor it takes, like sensory labor, as in when a domestic worker is working, so the kind of exposure they have to dirt, to sort of bad smell. I mean, even that is violence, right? So, I mean, whose definition of violence are we talking about, and who's doing the dirty labor, right?
Yeah.
And what dirty labor? And so the question here that I find fascinating are these many layers of violence that are happening, right? And there is a very middle class violence that's judging sex work as not labor. And I wonder, if we say that sex work is not labor, I mean, what are the implications of that? A. And B, Chinki, I found it very interesting. Like, why would you compare BDSM violence with, like, I'm just thinking, what are the overlaps with the kind of violence that maybe there is? Because in BDSM, the idea is of play, right? There is consensual violence and things like that, and fetishes and things like that. And actually, I had never thought of it before. I mean, do people go into brothels and initiate BDSM? And why do we not imagine?
Surprised. Yeah.
Hi.
Okay. So should
Sorry,
I
that
answer
was my question.
I'll answer the second question first. The second question about your the BDSM and the comparison thereof. See, when I was doing this BDSM piece, I came in touch with a lot of people and spoke to a lot of people. They belong to a very, very different kind of a set of people. They were like all these, what do you call, like elite, people who had very privileged backgrounds, and there was a certain articulation of BDSM. And that time they had burned this book called 50 Shades of Grey or something. I hadn't even read that book at that time. And it's not like I did a quick one. It was a month-long, foray into this. And I'm not judging any one of them. I'm just saying that there was this articulation. But I had been to the brothels before, and I had seen similar stuff. They were talking about it, because when you become a fly on the wall after a long, long time, the sex workers actually start to discuss customers and what happens with them. And I found that at that time, I didn't think much about it, There was one guy, I remember somebody told me about it, it's in my story also. He had this strange fetish of washing these menstruation clothes, and he would come to this hijra brothel. I mean, hijras don't menstruate, so they were making fun of him one time. And then at that time in Kamatipura, and even now if you go, the women had outlined their lips in black, and they had filled this color inside. I don't know if it was fashion or what it was, but that's where the conversation started, like why did they paint their lips like that? So they said that we don't want them to kiss us, and like all kinds of things explained about sex work. And somehow I felt that there was this kind of fetish thing involved. And then when I did the BDSM story, I also thought this is also this. So I wanted to ask get the subaltern view of fetish. I mean, that was my only thing. And I discussed it with my editor at that time, Manu Joseph. And he said, okay, if you can get the story, go ahead. And nobody has ever asked prostitutes about what they think of men. We always ask men what they think of sex workers or women or NGO workers, what they think. And they speak on their behalf, and let them speak, whatever they say. And when I wrote that article, I think I got a lot of calls from people, and a lot of repercussions was also there. Like people probably thought I was also some tantric sex practitioner or something, I had stalker issues, all kinds of things. But that's another story. But people obviously started to say that how can you be a woman and talk like that or write like that? I said, but I was only reporting. I mean, if they said something, they said something, and it's tragic, and it's also funny in a way if you read it. I mean, so if I don't know if that answers your question. The only quest was to understand fetish from the other point, because I also I asked these BDSM what do I say, like gang, whether this is limited to only you or does it happen elsewhere? And I'm sure it happens everywhere. I mean, BDSM can't just be like these uppity crowd. And I was intrigued about the articulation of that in the other world, and that's the system of looking after them, because they can't go back home. And there was one woman in her late 50s or 60s maybe, and she was waiting for customers, and we had chai together. And she told me that sometimes she has to sell herself for like 10, 20, 30 rupees, because there are younger women who, now that's, I mean, I don't know what's the solution for this, but I think maybe if people just went and talked to them, it's not scary at all. Like a lot of people, like, and this is funny actually, when I started going to Samadhipura, suddenly, a lot of people started calling me my school friends and all, saying that, oh, hey, can you take us there? And I'm like, no, I can't, like, I'm not a Kamatipura tour guide, and it's not a tourism place, there's work. And they're like, no, we also want to see. Like, but what stopped you? You guys are living in Bombay. I come from Delhi and go there. You can just go there. And it's not, it's not a fashionable thing to do. So yeah, so that.
Can I ask one question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I have a question
now,
for Vageshwari ma'am also. But have we started with the formal question answer session? Or
Yeah, questions only. That's much better. I don't have.
I was just wondering what would be the fate of these, you are talking about a 60-year-old woman waiting, ready to sell her body for 30 rupees. So, I mean, the whole notion of empathizing with them, when they are in their youth, they have customers, they can, whether they like it or not like it, that's a different thing. But what about the life beyond? There is one point of time because of ill health or because of age. So what exactly that they do? Do they have a kind of a organization which rehabilitates them.
I have a question related to Moshumi's actually.
In fact, my question also is exactly was Moshumi to. I think we're all getting old. We are worried about people after they retire. So that was exactly my question, because they don't have families to go back to often. It's not that once their work is done, sometimes with their income, they might be supporting their families. They might build their house. They might educate their children. Some of their children may be growing up with them, but they might also have extended families who they support, but from a distance. So what is the history?
So I wanted to ask, sorry, Chinki,
and if they don't go back, how are they looked after? Or is there some way to have enabling policies for their welfare once they cannot do sex work? Can there some kind of an insurance policy specially created for them? Can it be government funded? Can it be private funded? Is there a way? Have you thought about it? Have people thought about it? That's my question.
I don't know. I have thought about it, but can I really not thought about it? That's why there's no policy. Now, my thinking doesn't make a difference. As I said in the beginning, journalists can't save the world. Now, yeah.
And Chinki, hi, Chinki. We met at Vandita's place, Vandita Mishra.
When? There must have been long time ago.
Long back. We had a little get together. Yeah. When you were with Express then.
I think.
Yeah, of course.
I have another question for Professor Deshwal. We were just talking about the laws. We were talking about the laws specific to women, and we were talking about the violence. We were talking about how we articulate the term rape, and why the medical examination is absolutely redundant in such a case. We were talking in details about that. Now, I was just wondering, now that she started talking and she talked about that gully which has got hijras there. Okay, so hijras into prostitutions. And we talk about violence also. And these are this fetish kind of a approach which also talks about violence. So do we have some kind of provision in our legal system specific to these class of people? We have got law for the women. Do we have specific law which takes care of this group of people, especially the hijras or these transgenders? Do we have any laws, any such laws?
I'll just quickly ask my question to Chinki, sorry. So actually my question was related to Moshumi and Debraj, which is, what are the alternative forms of community that we can imagine in the Koti, in like, what are the kinds of solidarities that maybe other feminisms can actually learn from these women sort of inhabiting together? And like we are saying, maybe I'm coming from the queer discourse, maybe we always think of the word that Moshumi used was fate. What is the fate of something? Like, do we have to think of it in terms of fate? Can we think of alternative communities in terms of resistance? What are the resistances that women who live together have to teach us who don't know from that kind of, cohabitation?
Okay, so here's going on again with the answer.
Before you
go ahead.
Chinki, before you answer, there you have got 3 questions actually at the moment,
all
right?
related.
And let's also hear from the students. There's one student who is asking what constitutes consent, and I think probably this question is for Professor Vageshwari. So, Professor Vageshwari, if you could pick up any one of these questions, 3 which have been asked to Chinki, and 1 from the student, and I think 1 from Moshumi also. Yeah. So let Chinki, let Professor Vageshwari answer first, and then you can go ahead.
Okay, first coming to the question that Moshumi asked. Now, that was, do we have any law to protect these trans people and those with any alternate sexuality or anything? So this was, yes, we have section 377. We have 375, which talks, earlier it used to talk only about the vaginal penetration. After 2013, it has been expanded to include all forms of violations of the woman's anatomy, whether it is oral, anal, vaginal, or digital. All forms of violations that have been included in 375, but only when it comes to a woman. Now for men and for trans people, we have 377, which talks about carnal intercourse against the order of nature. See, because what we have conditioned ourselves into believing is that it is only peno-vaginal intercourse which is normal and everything else is abnormal. That is because we go by the interpretation because it is only peno-vaginal penetration that leads to perpetration of life, and that is what is normal. See, now what is normal and what is abnormal, that is very, very debatable. What is my normal might not be someone else's normal. How a person is born, how the person believes, whether the person feels that he's a man trapped in a woman's body or whatever, no, that is that person's normal. Now, who are we to decide what is normal and what is abnormal? So we have 377, which is a very, very broadly worded provision, and it only says carnal intercourse against the order of nature. So something that does not fit into the ordinary compartment that we have already made and conditioned ourselves into believing as normal, anything beyond that is unnatural intercourse, which is covered under 377. 377 earlier, it would criminalize even consensual activities. But now it has been watered down, and now consensual activities have been taken out of it. It is only non-consensual activities between adults. If it is a minor, then even consensual activity, because we have now a uniform age of consent for both boys as well as girls at 18 after POCSO. Now we have a uniform age of consent which operates for men and everyone now. But beyond 18, if it is non-consensual, that it can be covered under 377. Then coming to the other question, which was relating that how do we define consent? As it is very, very difficult to define the term consent, but in law, how we understand it is that it has to be an unequivocal, clear declaration of your intent. It should not be qualified. It should not be under any misrepresentation or under any form of a coercion. So it has to be a clearly worded consent that is expressly given or whether impliedly. But when you and the other person are on the same page and you understand what you are consenting to, and only when you are in a position to understand the nature as well as the consequences of what you are consenting to, so that is what amounts to consent under the law. Okay, then there was another question that I would also like to take up here, and that was regarding legalization of prostitution, although that is something that Chinki will talk about more at length. And first, Chinki, I enjoyed thoroughly your talk. Okay, and you have beautifully described the various facets of the problem that women face, and the way you compared it with Sanjay Leela Bhansali's movie. Oh my God, I watched that movie, although I thoroughly enjoyed that movie also. But of course, we need to understand, we just can't, the cinematic or whatever the liberties and the glorification of the entire system that SFC does in his movies anyway, that is for another day. Now coming to legalization of prostitution, yes, that needs to be done. As it is, we have not legalized it. When you were talking about women who are talking about their rights and women who say that, see, I am in this by choice. Women, they are in this by choice, but we need to understand that these women, they have exercised their freedom of choice in extremely coerced surroundings. It is not that they were into this by choice, or it is that they came looking for this profession. They were all pushed into this by one or the other way, and then they did not have proper exit points, due to which they are now stuck into this. If they are into this by choice, obviously it is their human right whether they want to.
Some of them you have to pay 30 rupees, 20 rupees, and sometimes $100. $100 is for these sliding doors. So you get a customer, you rent these things, and it's just like there's just one mattress or whatever, just that. And sometimes, in the cheaper ones, like 30 rupees, 50 rupees one, you just have a curtain of some phata chita kapra. So, you just take the customer there, get done, you pay the madam rupees. So that happens. And then you have like a whole system of these managers also let the women over there change. Is there, like this time I met one called Champa Bai, and Champa Bai has those things. I mean, it is also very interesting. It is one of the oldest buildings, and the first floor is full of these brothels. On the landing itself, you see a lot of these sex workers like lounging around. And if you go upstairs, you see six of these, whatever, barricaded like holes where the sex work happens, and they charge 30 rupees. They used to have their own girls, and she was Gangubai's friend, not friend, but like they used to know each other because Gangubai also owned rooms in the adjacent building, Musa building. So yeah, the fate, I don't know about the fate, but there is no, they hardly can go back to their villages. I mean, they do support their families, and if a lot of them have children, they have been abandoned by their husbands, lovers. Most of them are like that, and they have children. In many cases, they have parents, they support their children, and they're very, very protective about their children. This was another set of stories that we did. There is a night school that is there in Kamatipura, and the children don't stay in the brothels, but their mothers actually come promptly at 4 o'clock. They take them out, they buy them ice cream, they buy them whatever they cook for them, and the children return to the school at 5 or 6 o'clock. The dinner is there in the school, whatever the night shelter, and then they go to school from there in the morning. So they're very, very, like, they dream for their children. A lot of sex workers, their children grow up and do well, and they pull their parents out, like the mothers out. Some of them don't, some of them continue to be there. And one of the saddest parts of the story of Kamatipura or any other red light area would be that they all die and their bodies are taken by the BMC. Nobody really, that's the sad part. About what we can learn from these women is that in extreme situations, when we talk about laws and things like that, I think everything collapses in a red light area because none of these laws are ever implemented. Police will never file an FIR. Police will never listen to you. Police will always discriminate against you because there is that stigma. I don't know about the legalization angle as such, but I do think the exploitation should end. And there are two sides of this legalization debate, and I'm still figuring out. I think it's from my experience, I think nothing is going to change. Exploitation will happen. Sex work will continue. I think the only solution is that people like me and you and maybe students should go and maybe attempt to maybe listen to them. I think that's where we can begin, because we make these laws and we make a lot of these other things without even understanding, I think, what their lives are. Most of their lives are very sad. I'm not saying, another question I think Debolina asked about what we can learn from these women. From the Hijra brothels, I think they have this kinship, which is called the Gharana. So when they get old in the eunuch system, the Hijra system, you are taken care of, right? So basically you have a guru, then you have a nayak, then you have a whole community over there. So once you get old, your shishya will take care of you because they have these kinds of rituals. I mean, and that's another story, where they have to renunciate everything else from the past life, and the guru becomes your, like, so for example, this time when I went, this younger one would take care of the older one. The older one doesn't do sex work anymore. She does the manta. So till whatever comes, they will take care of their guru, and that's one of their, what you would call religion or ritual or whatever it is. In the other cases, I think it's not so much of a social security thing, but as long as they're in the brothel, I think food and everything is taken care of. Like I've seen this kind of community thing over there, which, exploitation also kind of unites people and resistance. And there's a lot of this friendships that I've seen, like at this time I met this old woman who used to be Gangubai's manager in those days. And, she came, did dhanda, and, they tell you very casually, now 80 years old, and the girls take care of her. And she was telling me that mujhe Delhi jana hai, ek baar Rajdhani dekhne ka hai, Lal Killa, and the girls were like, we'll take our mother. So they will always call them Ma. So that system is there. But, it's, when you talk about prostitution, there are several layers, right? This is the lowest of the low. And it's, there used to be a bank, I think, when I used to go previously. So the prostitutes would come and like deposit 10 rupees, 20 rupees. That bank is gone now. I don't know where it went. That had some sort of safety, whatever, quote unquote. But not really. They don't have much. I don't know where they'll go. They don't know where they'll go. It's unfortunate. But yeah, that's how it is.
Actually, I believe that still our society has this kind of a stigma attached to them. Because we can see that there are old homes There are old homes which are run purely on a on voluntary basis, by donation and all. But we seldom see such a thing. It is their community, and we just keep them to their, for them to look after. Nothing. We can only, we are sitting here discussing. I think only you are enlightening us about what it is all about. Otherwise we hardly.
No, I will still.
Because we have been there. What we can see that when we are parking. One very horrifying experience that I have, during the COVID time. My husband being a doctor, so we had this, this permission, during the second phase also to, go out and go to the hospital and all. So I usually used to accompany my husband whenever he used to go. And you would see that these people, during the COVID time, they don't have a customer. They are standing on the road and there are these cars who are picking. How pathetic the situation is. We hardly bother about it. We bother about, yes, these laborers, we bother because they can go, they can be rehabilitated. They have been given some kind of a money, but we hardly think about them, what they would be doing. So this is something we really have to think, if we want to work, we can work on those lines, actually. Until such time the prostitution is legalized, the government would not have any law or anything, to rehabilitate them or to give them subsidies or any kind of health benefits. That is only when the government recognizes them as a separate class of people working.
No, they did that. I think Maharashtra government came out with a circular during the pandemic, saying that, and they said that they are going to, like Meena Seshu has been fighting for this about this whole, but it was during the pandemic only to recognize it as work so that they could be given the benefits because they're out of all schemes. And another point that I wanted to make was, you're talking about 377 in the Hijra Gali. That became a major exploitation situation. Prostitutes do get raped all the time, by the way. And I know several who got raped and basically bruised and beaten up, and there are scars on their bodies. Police will say that tum sodomy kar rahe ho, tum to violation hai. It was bestiality apparently that time. And no, if the women don't protect themselves, and that's what I've seen, there's a whole ecosystem there, but they are exploited. I know that this police khabri guy, whoever it was, and they used to call him Maharaj Ji, Gali number 14, who actually locked me up, and that was one of the bizarrest things ever that happened. He would make MMS clips of these women, and he was like around 77, and he would exploit them. And till this date, if you ask the women, they will all abuse him. It's like, "Acha wa mar gaya, hamare ko aisa karta tha, waisa karta tha." So there's all these like things that happen. We can only get to that. Somebody mentioned this book. Reminds me of Mayank Austin Sufi's book. And there was another book that came out about the bar dancers. The Kamatipura has many aspects to it. There was this Congress house where the mujras used to happen. Things changed after the bar dancing was declared illegal and all that. And there was Faras Road, which is Bachu Seth Ki Wari, where you have this Haji Mastan and all these people used to go to watch mujras. I have seen mujras over there. There's a lot of money involved. It has been given to Balwas for redevelopment. All of that is separate. But to come to this point about the book, now these books also are problematic in a way. And for years I've been trying to write a book, but I'm unable to. Because what happens with these books is that you take an angle, which is very patronizing. How do you tell the story of the other? In Mayank Austin Sufi's book, which I reviewed actually, I thought the problem was that you don't remain invisible. You have a problem with invisibility. It's not about the writer, it's about the people. And to go from a Jorbag residence to a brothel and to talk about that, it creates that barrier. Same thing with Sonia Falero's book. There's an instance in the book, she talks about her sandwich dropping from her bag. Why wouldn't you, you're hanging out with them, you're taking their stories, why can't you eat with them? I don't know. This is my personal opinion, but I think these kinds of writings also are problematic in many ways. So maybe that's yeah. You have come too far, but I think what is far in terms of maybe an achievement, maybe yes, but in terms of empathy and telling the real story, maybe no. So yeah, I hope that was.
Yeah. So shall we call call for the day, or still it's lovely conversation going on, and I think very remarkable one. So can
I ask one question, please?
The last one. Yeah,
okay.
last one.
Thank you.
Yes.
Chinki, what you just said about just these books that are being written, that just makes me think, do you as a journalist ever think of writing fiction? Because
yes,
I think we as, because even as academics, sometimes the academic register is not enough for us to translate the experiences or the thoughts or feelings that we feel. And can there be a register of writing? Because, you write, you encourage writing, and, you archive it. So not fiction in terms of what Arundhati Roy has written in her latest book.
I can actually answer that question, but you'll have to excuse me for 2 minutes. I think somebody is ringing my doorbell, if that's okay. Sure.
It was a very enlightening, and a very enriching session that we have had.
Thank you, Tanvi. Thank you very much. This was really, I joined late, unfortunately, but this is.
But
actually,
lots of stories.
It's like opening a window. It's like opening a window to which you can listen to things that just listen. I mean, the idea is that it's so important to sometimes just listen. I mean,
we will invite Professor Deshwal again on this the law that the consent law of 18, and then the marital consent, which is still, I suppose, it's been sub judice. So we will have
we organize something on marital rape, and of course, we need to get the legal perspective from Dr. Vageshwari.
क्या बात करते हो तनवीर? हिंदुस्तान में ये सब नहीं होता है.
Acha, so now we get back to something formal. So Chinki, go ahead with your
Okay, so about the fiction thing, I think there are these great books people have written about the sex workers, and one of them is William T. Wallman, and maybe Devulina, you should read his books. He actually went and stayed with them and kind of wrote these beautiful, outstanding stories, called the most demented writer of America, because he even dressed up as a transgender and or a cross-dresser, and went and hung out with them to understand what their lives were. Fiction offers great possibilities, but I actually personally don't really make much of a difference between fiction and non-fiction, because I always thought that I couldn't write fiction, and I even applied for MFA, and I was actually planning to go for my MFA this year, and I got stuck. But fiction remains a challenge, but I think one of the best ways, I think, is to, you can use that actually, as I feel, as journalists, because we come across many of these kinds of stories, and sometimes, you wonder, and I mean, you don't have that, access is there, but it's not there. And, these stories, even like I the beginning point of this was when Zeenat would talk about her life, and invariably she would slip into this imagined life, like she would say that, I have so much gold that I inherited, and, like this, we have this much jewelry, and that I thought was also fiction coming out of her. And I'm sitting across, and as a journalist, I have no way to verify that fiction. And how do I verify her memory or somebody else's memory or whatever, or their story, So I don't make much. I mean, it's blasphemy to say that as a journalist. You can choose to believe or you don't choose to believe. And if you want to write about their stories, maybe I've read certain academic papers. What they lack is that, atmospherics maybe. And a lot of time, my problem with academia is that a lot of times, people write from their rooms. And I have a lot of academic friends, and they talked about a lot of these poverty stuff. But I doubt if they ever had a meal in a Dalit household, and it's not easy, by the way. And I'm going to tell you this one incident where we went to do a story on the toilet cleaners, like these people who, the Valmiki community and the dry latrines, and they were doing this thing. And they were killing a pig, and we were in this very narrow gully, and the pig this whole thing was happening in front of me. And sometimes when you see that, you become very disoriented, because right like 2 feet away from you maybe. And then they first fleeced it, then they burnt it, all kinds of everything happened in front of us. And we had gone and seen these people carrying, shit on their heads, and it was all something. And then this guy offered us tea, okay, and with the thing that, oh, आप तो upper caste हो, आप हमारे यहाँ चाय कैसे पियोगे? I said, चाय तो पी लेंगे, चाय तो कहीं भी पी लेंगे. But I'm just saying कि sometimes, they also have, like, it's difficult. So I think we need to get, in order to write, I think you have to go through all of this, to be challenged by them, for you to challenge them. And maybe, I think if I ever write a book, which I've been thinking, and I think all the publishers must have run away by now after me delaying, because I didn't want to come across, or maybe I didn't, there's always this thing that I don't know enough, and you keep going back, and it's been a decade that I've been going back, and I've read these numerous books that came in between. And when I was going to Kamatipura, that time I think Mayank was going to GB Road, and I've been to GB Road as well. And if I could, and I wanted to at one point to stay in a brothel, and I have stayed. In the night, it's difficult for me, because they themselves said that you should leave in the night at least, because it turns whatever. But if I were a man, I would stay, and I would see for what it is. Nobody can love you more. Could have been a different kind of a book about, that line comes very late in the book. I don't know how many of you have read it. This is not to say, I think there is a scope for much better writing, and I think fiction can be used. I think academics can also use, because in order to write about red light areas, I think you'll have to use imagination, because most of them, they also talk about imagined lives. And so I don't know when I'll write, but yeah, if I write, it will be fiction. And another interesting thing I was, despite one of the observations I've had is that they all, even if they have like a 10 by 10 room, they will all have either an aquarium or a cage, or like some rabbit, like birds, something. They all, this time it struck me like 3 times, like I've been like trying to like count. And that to me was very interesting. And they're very attached to these birds or pets. So I don't know what all this means. These are just series of observations. I have no idea what it means.
Yeah, so I think now we are done, and I think Chinki, have you exhausted with all your stories? I know you've got a lot of stories. Still, you've got a lot of stories, but for the day, I think
we will have another session.
Yeah, we should call for a day for this day, and of course, yes, has been a very, very fascinating talk by both the speakers, Dr. Vageshwari and Chinki, as usual. So I would request Mrityunjay, to start with this sort of a ritual called formal vote of thanks, and of course, I would also request Mausami to sort of kind of talk about the whole fest, that how it has been, and a formal vote of thanks. Yes, Mrityunjay, do you have to say something?
Yes, sir.
Students, I think students, it's their festival, their program, so I think they should be there. Yes, Mrityunjay.
Yes, thank you, sir. So it's an immense pleasure to have all the speakers and the audience here, turning the seminar into a successful, interactive, and engaging one. The Department of BA program would like to thank the speakers for making all of us a part of their knowledge, and the listeners for being patient and sincere. I also extend my heartfelt gratitude to our respected principal, our respected convener and co-convener, and all the other faculty members who stood today and made the session more productive and successful. Now I would like to request Professor Mausami Bose to come and say a few words about the entire festival and deliver a formal vote of thanks on behalf of the department as a part of a closing ceremony of Sangam 2022.
Thank you, Mrityunjay. So this has been one of the very quickly decided kind of a fest, but it was very well executed. All the organizers' hard work, and we had wonderful session yesterday also. two professors from JNU talked about Ukraine war, and they have had Kavi Sammelan in the morning, which was really wonderful. I mean, so nice to hear students reading out their poetry. And today also there was wonderful music session. And I mean, this session is, there's not enough word that I can express what a wonderful enriching session that we have had. So, it's all, I thank you all the faculty members of teaching faculty who joined us, the students, and all our speakers. And thanks a lot, for making the fest a success. Thank you.
Is there a link or something, or
they have made a YouTube this thing? There is they have recorded the whole thing. It is there. So we will be sending you the link. You can just.
And I'm just taking a photo for my mom.
They will also send you a photograph. They have taken our photographs also.
But a good thing, Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Chinki, that you just, in such a short span of time, you agreed, and what a wonderful lecture it was, and what a wonderful lecture, Dr. Vageshwari. So thank you all so much, and hope we do it more, offline mode. Now we are calling speakers at our college. So next time, of course, we will meet at the college and in a physical mode, right? So thank you so much, and good night.
Okay. Bye.